Alrighty, Gabriel here for the final of the common tier lists here. Common rarity tier lists, whatever. Got the Wurmkin here. Let me preface this by I'm a bit biased here because I don't think I like Wurmkin as much as everyone does. And I think I especially don't think that the common tier here, the common rarity here pool is as good as everyone says. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I can only know what I know, right? I can only speak to what my experiences have been with the clan. So, all that being said, let's get into it here. Got a real shitter here to start off with. Bog Fly. D tier for me, man. I would go so far to say it's one of the shittier cards in the game, in my opinion. Maybe that's a hot take, but it's not like horrible, I guess. It's okay in the first few rings. Once in a blue moon, I've made it work late game, but I don't know, man. Yeah, it costs 0, sure. It's 1 pip, sure, but it's not a priority draw, so you can't rely on getting it early. It's not survivable at all. It's a measly 5 health, and I don't really find the damage gain anything that crazily good. It's funny that I like the Bog Fly egg so much more, right? But there's a lot that goes into that. A, it's a priority draw, so I can rely on building around it early. B, it has kind of a pseudo overstack going on where like I can hatch it over the pip limit. And also there's just the fact that I can pour upgrades into it and both the flies get it. And any sort of upgrades I apply before then they get as well, at least the stat change upgrades, of which Wurmkin has a decent amount, right? But I don't know. The fly as a unit, as a card in my deck, I hate it, man. It's so disappointing to me when I'm playing Wurmkin and in the first 2 rings, Bog Fly is the card that is infused. It's such a hit. It's like, so rarely can you justify putting it down. I don't know. You can put it down the first few rings, I guess, but that's one more uninspired card that now you have to make a choice. It's like, well, I probably want the other cards, but they're uninspired, which is immediately devastating, right? You don't have many cards in your deck at the start of the game. All the starters are uninfused other than the basics, right? All your train stewards, all the starting spells are not infused. Adding more uninfused stuff to your deck just makes it really hard to do Wurmkin things. But also similarly putting a unit that kind of sucks as an infusion target. So it's a one-time only thing, so it's like it's on similar level to like a consume, except it's not as good as consume because it doesn't trigger etches and it can't be returned. It can't interact with things like bog slime. I really don't think Bog Fly is good at all. I'd say, and I think it's actively bad. I think it hurts the clan overall that this card exists, especially at the common tier. Any bad card is a 1/3 chance on any draft to be what gets infused. So that really hurts the clan, in my opinion. A clan that relies on echoes so much for hatching eggs, for getting good extract cards off, for powering up your spine chief, for just doing inspire triggers. You just can't have bad stuff happen like that. Now, on that similar note, we go right from the bottom all the way to the top with this next one, Bounding Echoes. To me, this has to be the best, at least in terms of takeability, like the best common for Wurmkin. Bounding Echoes is it can be the godsend that gets around that bad RNG when you're just not getting good infused options. Bounding Echoes can make up for that in a pretty big way. Even if it isn't doing that, it's at least getting your starter spells and anything else infused, which can be really good. It can be pretty damn good in a lot of cases, but it's never bad, right? It really helps with everything. You can intrinsic it, you don't have to. You can permafrost it. I wouldn't really remove the consume on it, but because you don't really want to keep playing it over and over again, in my opinion. But maybe you do. Maybe you have like a Thorn Fruit or something where that makes sense. But all in all, it's just a really good card. It's one of those low investment cards that really needs no upgrade. It's very non-awkward to play. It just gives a huge boost to your deck. It allows you to do Wurmkin things regardless of bad RNG. So it's just really nice to get a Bounding Echoes. It's very hard for me to ever not take Bounding Echoes if I see it. Like, there's got to be a damn good reason for me to take the other card. Like, maybe I started with 2 Bounding Echoes already is often a good, one of the main only reasons I would not take it, honestly. The next one we got here, also, I think a very good card, you know, Echo Infusion. I mean, these 2 cards right here, maybe that's what people think of when they think of good commons, and it kind of makes them figure out about the rest. I don't know, I don't really know what's necessarily going on in people's evaluations, but for me, these are 2 very good cards. Like, I can't knock these at all. They're 2 of the best cards in the game. Echo Infusion, pretty hilarious to compare this against a lot of the Awoken cards, right? And granted, I think Awoken is the best clan in the game, but they've got some pretty bad spells, like Cycle of Life, for example. Cycle of Life costs 3 Ember and gives you the same health, and is a rare, same health as Echo Infusion. Sure, I don't get the 3 useless spikes, but an Echo Infusion, the Extract 1 is such a low cost. Like, that, you can do that with a bad Wurmkin deck, right? Extract 1 is nothing, and if it's infused, it's literally free. And also gives you an Inspire and whatnot. And hey, if you got a Karuska on top of that, now you're actually generating echoes. The extract is so low that in a lot of scenarios, you literally can generate echoes with Echo Infusion. So that's a really good card. I can't say enough good things about Echo Infusion. It's so good in so many scenarios. It's never bad. But on a lot of, like, you know, stuff like Cold Channel Soul Guard, it's a godsend with that. And the next one we got on here is the Echo Snare. Curious what people think about this. I'm putting it in D tier. I don't know, man. I just don't think this card is very good. Like, even if it's infused, I mean, it's better than a Bog Fly in that sense. But again, beyond just the consume synergy, it's a one and done, which early on is tough because you kind of want, even though you don't really recycle your deck much, by ring 3 you do, and you kind of need those echoes a lot of the time. I certainly don't love it as a starter where it's uninfused. You know, it's not really doing anything other than, it is, I guess I will give it this. It is good early game. It's not bad early game. Most commons aren't, right? Most of them are pretty good early game regardless. But I just think this falls off so hard by late game. Like, AoE, you want it to kill the stuff the turn you play it generally. And if you don't, it needs to be something like a Titan's Tooth that just really synergizes with most decks a lot and provides a little bit something more than 2 Reap to everybody and is replayable. You know, there's just so much going against Echo Snare, I feel. Technically, it's good value, right? 0 cost, 2 Reap to everybody is good value, but too often it isn't preventing the damage to my units that I needed because I'm drawing it too late. And you can't really blame deck. That's just RNG at that point early game, right? There's not much I could have done to construct my deck differently. It's just draw order. Whereas any other AoE card, like, you know, a good AoE card like Glimmer or Vent kills the damn thing that turn. And it does more damage anyway, typically, I would say. Outside of a really high Echo deck, which early on you're not going to have. So at best, to have it be relevant late game, you have to have a ton of echoes, probably on on all floors, not all fours. That's a different thing that we'd be talking about. But anyway, Echo Snare, I don't like it. Maybe you can convince me otherwise, but I just don't think it's that good. And now, this is probably the hottest take. This is probably the one that might piss people off the most. Echo Transfer. And don't fight me, guys. I'm at least putting an A, okay? I'm at least putting an A. I recognize it's overall value, but I don't know. I don't think this is as good as everyone says it is. I'm sure everyone says this is the best card in the clan. I don't agree, and I don't know if you're going to be able to convince me on this one. Here's my thing with Echo Transfer. Sure. For 0, 15 flat damage, that's really good. But what does it really mean in a lot of cases? I mean, early on, Extract 2 is not cheap. It's not. I mean, especially if this is uninfused, which most of the time it's gonna be. Let's be honest, most of the time it's gonna not be infused. Especially if you started with 2 of them. I really actually hate starting with 2 Echo Transfers. Often you can't even get them off in the first ring. Even like if you draw them early, you basically can't even do it. But in a lot of cases, it's not even good to have in your deck. Like Spine Chief, and this probably comes down to playstyle. I don't think I'm that out of the norm here, though, in saying that I really just don't see much reasons to go Infector Spine Chief. Like, it would be good in Infector Spine Chief, but until they nerf either Corruptor or Decayer or both, if it ever happens, I just don't see reasons to go Infector. So in the context that you're always going to be Decayer and you're always going to be Corruptor, Echo Transfer is actively bad for that. It is an immediate downgrade anytime you play it on Corruptor's floor. Maybe in the long run it eventually does damage, but I'd rather just have my Corruptor damage and not have to lose 2 Echoes that turn. And similarly, it just makes 0 sense for Decayer unless it's like your only Relentless option and you have to give up some wave clear to do that, which is, I guess, okay, but it's pretty shitty to do that. You don't want to lose 2 Echoes on a floor with Decayer. You don't have that luxury usually. It's not good for your game plan. Even if it's to put it on a backliner or something, I just really don't think it's that good. And also, if you're doing any sort of egg hatching outside of probably the Bog Fly egg, you can get away with it, but any other eggs, you know, typically, since no one really takes the Bog Fly or the Bog Host cocoon, we'd be talking about the Kin Host pupae or vessel, I guess, which is, you know, I rank it kind of middle of the road, all things considered, but a lot of times that's just a unit you have to get stuck with. You know, it is a multi-striker technically, and it's okay. I think Echo Transfer is horrible with this unit. It's so hard to get it to hatch, unless you really have some steroid like hatching that you can rely on. Then you can do it, of course. But I don't know, especially uninspired. It's just a dead weight in all of the above situations I've listed off. Like, you just cannot it's so against the game plan here to lose 2 Echoes, especially like early game, but even sometimes late game. So I really think it's a dead weight a lot of the time. Now that I've focused on all the negative aspects, I'll bring it right back around, say there is a reason it's still A tier. It's still, at the end of the day, has a 1 out of 3 chance to be infused. Maybe a little bit lower since, you know, you might just be starting with a card, of course. But, you know, when it is infused, Extract 1 is totally worth it here. And it also triggers an Inspire, of course, and then Karuska and whatnot. Also, if you have Karuska, it's obviously super worth it. And if you're not running Corruptor and you're not needing to hatch a high shell egg, it's pretty good. It's a pretty damn good card. A lot of good scaling there. Also, I guess if you just don't care about using Wurmkins and you're using your other clan mainly, and that's pretty good there too, because you can probably get a few Echoes and then it's just as good scaling at that point. So I'm not going to deny that 0 Ember 15 flat damage is a bad deal. I guess my argument is a lot of times you can't really make it work. You need something. You need to have gotten lucky with your infusions, I feel. Not lucky, but rather you needed to not get super unlucky. But I don't know. It's overrated, I feel. Come at me. Come at me. I stick by it. But, you know, whatever. I recognize it's probably a hot take. Now, hosting Ken, this might be another hot take. I don't think it's that good. It's better than Echo Snare and Bog Fly. Like, I can be somewhat satisfied with it. But again, I don't know. It's just very non-impactful, I feel. Like, it's good early game. It's a one and done because it's consume. Might get you some edge synergy, but, you know, it's not going to help you gain Echoes even if it's the infused one, similar to Echo Snare, similar to Bog Fly, because it only is a one and done. You're not going to recycle into it. Its pushback is sometimes good, it's sometimes not. Sometimes I just want to put that damage in a tank, but I also don't want my units to not be able to get a hit in on it, right? So then you're kind of forced sometimes to like just play it on something and not really have it be that relevant. But you know, it is pretty good damage early game. I think late game it's kind of useless damage, but at least it's a zero cost consume, so it's not like a high priority removal. You can, in rare cases, use it on your own units to shuffle them around. I've done that before with like Sketches decks. It's okay for that. But overall, I just don't really think there's much ceiling here with this card. It's got an okay floor. The floor is the only reason I'm keeping it out of D tier, to be honest. But there is just no ceiling with this card, I feel. Like, what are you going to do? Add 30 non-attuned damage to it? Add piercing on a one and done? Fuck that. Like, I guess you can put piercing and have repeater for 23 damage, which isn't even a good breakpoint, by the way. You'd have to add 10 on top of that to have that even be super consistent, but I don't know. Maybe it's another hot take. It's good value, I guess, for Zero Ember, but I just don't think it's that good. The next one, continuing, I'm sure, the cards that everyone loves that I don't really like, Proclamation. So everything I named off about Echo Transfer still applies to this. I don't need to reiterate what the steep cost Extract 2 really means, especially early game. And for the damage, 50 damage, I don't think it's really all that worth it. Obviously, it's attuned, so if you do upgrade it, it can become pretty worth. Also, similar, if it's infused, it's pretty good. But I don't know, man. I find this one to be pretty overrated too. I think the Extract 2 is a really high price to pay when it's not infused, especially early game. And also, I don't really want to go to a Merchant of Magic in the first 3 rings typically. At least the first 2 rings typically. So my likelihood that it gets upgraded early when it would find the most value is low. I don't like to start with 2 Proclamations similar to that. I don't really like to start with 2 Echo Transfers. They're uninfused. There's 2 of them in your deck. It really hurts your ability to put together a good Inspire game early or a good Egg game early. It hurts your early game Spine Chief. I just don't like these cards that much, even though I have them in the A and B tier, which to me still says they're okay, right? They're good to okay. I just think they're so overrated. They cost so much, but they're worth the cost at the same time. But you just can't pay the cost a lot of the time. That's the problem. It's like technically they're worth the cost, but you just can't pay the cost. It's like, in a way, it's kind of like if they're not inspired, like Ritual of Battle is a card I love, right? It's technically not worth the cost, but it's very easy for me to make the cost 1 Ember, whereas it's not really that easy for me to say, to just go have some consistent way to say, I will have a deck that can pay the cost of Extract 2 on several of these cards, right? I'm just not guaranteed to have that, whereas I'm always guaranteed to be able to go to Merchant of Magic. And I guess I'm always guaranteed to go to Magic and get plus damage, but it might be Surge Stone that I'm offered, and even then, plus 10, it makes it to 100, which is pretty nice, but it doesn't change the fact, even though the value of it went up, the cost is still the same. The cost is still Extract 2. And therefore, the cost is just so often too much for me to pay these. Whereas like Echo Infusion, the cost isn't, it's literally half the cost. Very relevant early game. And I think 10 health is equal benefit to me as the damage and the Proclamation. Maybe not the Echo Transfer, but it's pretty damn close. So I don't know. Whereas I really like Echo Infusion, I don't love Transfer and Proclamation, even though they're very often doing a lot of stuff for a lot of my decks. Like, I do think that they are a liability a lot of the time. And then the final one here is Shelter. I toyed around with this one into the A or the B tier. I'm putting it to the top of B. Shelter can be good, but it can also suck. So here's now that we have them all down, I'll talk more about Shelter, but I just want to think about this here really quick, please. Think about this in the context of Ring 1. You have 1 out of 8 chance to get 2 copies of any of these put into the deck. So if it's Echo Transfer, like I said, you often just can't play it. Same with Proc. If it's Shelter, it's not doing a whole lot of armor for you if you have two uninspired, uninfused copies of Shelter. Not doing a whole lot for you those early rings, if ever, right? Hosting Kin, it's some damage. Echo Snare, it's some damage, but they're not helping you. Or Bog Fly, it's just kind of there. The only thing that really has super good impact, I would say, is Bounding Echoes and Echo Infusion to start with. Everything else is lackluster to start with, so you only have a 2 out of 8 chance, in my opinion, of getting enticing starting cards with Wurmkin. That's why I really, even though like you look at the spread and it's not necessarily bad, I think the context of the fact that you're always starting, 1/4 of the time with cards that I think are bad to start with 2 copies of makes this actually the worst common pool in the game. That's my hot take that I have kind of come to the conclusion of here. Even though you can look at something like a Wurmkin and maybe they have overall lower average tier rating here, I think just the extra thing, because I'm rating across the whole game, right? But I think the extra just added thing of having 2 copies of usually bad starting cards because they're guaranteed to be uninspired or uninfused is rough. Now on that note, that's kind of, I feel like Shelter uninfused, I just don't like it that much, which is weird to say because it just represents 2 extra armor kinda, but at the same time it represents an inspire. It represents actually adding echoes to the floor. So I don't know, it's not horrible uninfused, but I do find that it's really just not something I love to have. I like to have it when it's just really natural to play, right? If it's natural to play and just kind of does a lot on the floor, then it's nice. It's also a card you can build around technically. I've had runs where it's like my consume return target either through Broken Memory, Spell Chain, or Repeater, Echo Right. Either of those cases, it's nice. You can also consume remove it. Some runs that makes sense. It is definitely a card that if you have enough echoes to make it worth it, it's worth it. But I don't know. If you think about it just as a baseline, I think as a baseline, it's often just not worth. It's often not worth being in a deck, especially if it's uninfused. It's the armor it provides. I mean, think about if you weren't playing Wurmkin and you had a similar card. It was a consume, and it was a 1 cost, and it did armor to the whole floor. Like, how much armor would be worth it for you? Like maybe 10? I would say like 10 might be passable. That's kind of like a Welder Helper Infusion, which you already know I don't really love that infusion that much. It's only equal to 1 turn of a self-infused Steelworker, but we'll say like 10 is okay. So in the context of an uninfused Shelter, you have to have 5 echoes for it even to match that on the floor already, which is totally doable by mid to late game, but I find early game so often Shelter, it just gets you like literally 2 armor, 2 or 4 armor to everybody, and that's not really that good. I mean, Echo Infusion is just better. And it's also health, so it's permanent. Well, it's not permanent. It's permanent throughout the fight, right? If you have any sort of heal or lifesteal, it's much better than armor. But anyway, that is my bashing of Wurmkin, so to say. Maybe I'm just a hater. I probably am. It's okay. I'll admit it. But that is how I feel. That's just like my opinion, man. Hey, I say Bounding Echo's good. Echo Infusion's good. But, I don't know. I've just had too many bad experiences with Echo Transfer, Proclamation. Basically, everything A tier and below I've had a lot of bad experiences with. Even though I still keep Echo Transfer in the A tier because of its usual value that you can get. But, man, I don't know. I do find basically all of these to be overrated. Anyway, be sure to smash that dislike button. Nobody can see it anymore. Nobody but me. Nobody but me can see that one. As always, thanks for watching. And until next time, peace.